Good morning, everybody. Welcome to 1 Billion Cups Chico chapter. My name is Tim Sharkey. I'm one of the organizers. I'm when Chico starts. 1 Billion Cups is a weekly event put on every Wednesday at 9 a.m. across the United States. And right now there's 163 chapters. So it is happening the same ways all across the United States, with the same technical difficulties, with the same people showing up, not knowing where it is, wondering what the hell we are all about. So Kaufman Foundation is a large foundation all about entrepreneurialism and spreading the need for it in the United States, because over the last 15 years it's down like 40%. And that's huge. Small business is one of the largest across the United States. So it's our job to help encourage entrepreneurs to get out there and share their ideas and take that step, because it's just one step at a time, and taking action gets where you need to go. And that's what we're here for. We're a front door to the community. We like to create an ecosystem to show each person that there are lots of resources out there. Not just the typical go down, get your business license, and then try to figure it out at the library. There's all of us here. We all have small businesses, failures, successes, and that's what we're here to do, is collaborate and share our experiences with the community and let them know they need to try, because it's the best thing in the world to work for yourself. But a lot of people don't understand that you don't have somebody to talk to about your ideas. What to do with HR, what to do with your bank accounts, what to do with your insurances, what to do with your employees, what kind of marketing you should do, when you should grow, what kind of loans you should have. Your neighbors don't care, because they're clocking in at a different job, come home, go to bed, do the same thing over and over and over again in the program. So they don't know our program. Our program is to make it up as we go. Something goes wrong, pivot, go the next direction, figure it out again, and experience failure on a daily basis to make yourself grow. If you're not growing, you're not failing, you're not moving. So that's what the Kaufman Foundation is about, being the front door to the community and creating an ecosystem where we all share. And I drink the Kool-Aid, apparently. And the coffee. So thank you. So I'd like to say thank you to our sponsors today. One, Gardenville Cafe, for the venue. Thank you very much. And the coffee. It's a new face for us this year, so if you happen to try it, please stop by. The coffee and the food are awesome, and so are the owners. We have who are other sponsors today? Danny Schwartz with our social media marketing. We have Chico Starts. Not really a sponsor. And we have organizers. Organizers that are here, myself, Danny, Heather, Lynn, who else is here?
Eva.
Kent, Eva. Yeah. It's already been a frustrating morning.
Fourth cup of coffee then?
Third. No fourth. Without our organizers, everyone volunteers for this. So it's not just one person or one company putting it on to promote themselves. It's the community promoting the community to come out and do so. So thank you all of the sponsors and the organizers. We really appreciate it. So now it's time for our speaker. We have Michael Redman with Half a Bubble Out, and he's going to talk to us about his successes and failures here in the community, and share what it takes to be motivated every day and face those challenges. So thank you very much, and come on up.
That's a tall challenge. I don't know what it takes to be motivated every day. So let me tell you a little bit about my story, kind of overarching arc about who we are and what we've done. And then my understanding is we'll go into some Q&A and do that, all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Half a Bubble Out is the name of our company. It's a marketing, advertising, and business consulting firm. We started here in Chico, and we've been based here in Chico, and we're almost 17 years old. So I feel like we're probably successful. We've probably done all right. We probably made a certain measure. I watched the business failure rates and all the statistics and everything else. So when we hit 2.5, 3 years and we were still alive, barely, but we did it, I was happy. And when we hit 5 years and we were still alive, I was ecstatic. And when we hit 10 years, I was over the moon. There are arbitrary times on a calendar, but they break through certain statistical barriers. And they were encouraging because I knew that we had survived and we'd made it. And sometimes when you're running a business, you probably know, it just feels good to survive and know you made it. It's nice to move past the survival status where you're just, you're no longer at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, that you've actually figured out how to meet some of your needs and everything else. So let me tell you a little bit about our journey and some things we're doing, and a little bit about what I promised about some areas of leadership, and then we'll go into Q&A. So we started in 2002, sorry about that. I went back to college when I was 29 years old. I graduated when I was 34. And my wife and I, Catherine, who is also my business partner, we've been married almost 26 years, been in business together for 17, and we have a staff of about 8 here in town and a larger team of about 15. So at our office, there's 8 people coming and going every day. We meet the payroll, we deal with those issues, we deal with community, and then we do business with our marketing and advertising and business consulting here in Chico in the Northern California area, but we also do stuff across the country. So we have a client in Manhattan, we've had clients in LA, we've had clients in little tiny towns that I have to look on a map to find in New Hampshire. We work in various markets and niches, but what we love to do is work with small businesses that are kind of our sweet spot that we're dialing in is between 3 employees and 50 employees. Usually there's a financial marker in there too that we're looking at, but I like to work with leaders who are growing their companies and want to create jobs for other people. I think there's a really big deal for that. A big need for it, because this whole issue of small business and the statistics you were sharing and all that, and fewer people doing it, part of what's happening in America in this small business, because I'm a part of a couple of associations nationally and internationally. And there's 2 things I see. One is a bunch of people starting their own solopreneurs and they never want to create jobs. I think that's awesome and it's great and you get to work for yourself. But I'm a big proponent of this other group of folks and I like to work with them because I like leadership. And I think self-leadership works over here when you're doing it on your own, but as you can continue to grow your vision, you can continue to make a larger impact in your life financially, but impact others positively and give good jobs. That's a big deal because you have the opportunity and the power to do it as a business owner that nobody else I know of has that ability to do. You can go to work for corporate America, but you hire people and let them go based on the budget you're given. You get to create the budget. You get to try and figure out how to make something and build something larger when you're a small business owner. So that gets exciting to me. And we're going to talk a little bit about leadership in a minute. Let me give you an idea of what else we do. When we started the company, there was a rule in our house that I wasn't allowed to make any more business cards. The rule, my wife gave me the rule, because I'd created way too many business cards for all these great business ideas I thought I had, all these great ideas. I was going to flip real estate, so I have a real estate card. I had this card, I had that card, but I never took the companies, and I never was able to move them forward. Yeah. And so that's why she told me I wasn't allowed to make any more business cards until I made something work. Half a Bubble Out came along, and it was a nickname given to me before I went back to college. And a mentor said, Michael, you look at the world a little differently. A college degree would give you credibility. It'll give you an education that you didn't get. And when we graduated from college and started a marketing firm, Catherine thought, why don't we just call it Half a Bubble Out? Which comes from the carpenter's level if you don't know. And basically what our friend was saying is, I'm not quite level. From there, the journey for the last 17 years has not only included Half a Bubble Out and growing a successful company that helps other companies grow and do some really fun stuff, but we've also had lots of failures in between. So we started a company before the Great Recession that was in the new space of video tutorials online and things like that. We were in a great space. We were underfunded. It failed. It failed because I couldn't get enough money. I knew we needed this much. We'd thrown in everything we could out of our own pockets. Anybody in here throwing everything they have in their own pockets into their business? And we actually had investors show up at the office and sit down, and then when the conversation was over, one of them had come from the Bay Area. He looked at me and he said, "I'd like to invest in your company." Now, some of you are going, "I would love it if somebody would invest in my company." One of the first lessons I learned is be careful where you take money from. We ended up turning them down. I ended up taking that company and we ended up shelving it and calling it a failure because we couldn't get it going, because it wasn't that we couldn't fund it. I didn't believe we could fund it properly with the right team. And when you're building a company, the right team is everything. And the wrong team can be a weight around your legs pulling you under the water. And you can't get out of it easily. It's much harder to cut those chains later than it is to just walk away from it. And it's hard to walk away. So they offered us a check, and they gave us one of those lowball deals. We'll give you, 6 figures of money for 40% of your company. And you're like, that's a bad deal. The math doesn't sound right. Now, I've heard it said that if 2% of $1 billion company is worth more than 100% of nothing. And you think about those things. But that was our first real big failure after we started Half the Bubble Out. And we walked away from that because we learned one of our first big lessons. Be careful who you get hooked up to. Be careful who you marry in business. Later in the company, we came back to it after the recession, and we started another company that some of you may have heard of. Many of you I don't know, and it's in the pet food space. It has nothing to do with marketing and advertising as a service. It's called Rabbit Hole Hay. It's based here in Chico. We buy special varietals of hay that are grown in Northern California and Oregon and Nevada. We put it in boxes that we specially design, and we sell it all over the world. It's growing we're in hypergrowth speed. Is anybody growing their company really, really fast? You guys are the sock cutter, right?
Yeah. Well,
No, you're not. You were there, weren't you?
yeah, I've been there.
Okay. I was recognizing your face. Sorry about that.
Okay.
What are you doing now that's growing fast?
Well, I'm in the print and marketing space.
Okay.
A lot of print right now.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's growing fast.
Super fast.
Good for you. All right. Or in other places, that space is kind of trending off.
Well, yeah, if you're in the wrong niche.
Yeah, niche is important.
Yeah.
So selling hay to people who own pet rabbits in cities is hyper niche. And we're growing hyper fast. The next problem you can have when you grow your company, we've started learning here, and that was you can grow too fast. But when everybody says growing too fast, has everybody heard that? Growing too fast can kill your company? It's a great problem to have. It's better than not, and yet sometimes it's the worst problem to have. We're growing at 3x on average, somewhere between 2x and 4x a year for the last 4 years. It's growing like this. It's incredibly painful. I was at a business meeting this morning. Trying to find capital to fund something like that without giving too much of the company away is really difficult. And it's an e-commerce and international shipping type of business. So as a business consultant for Half a Bubble Out, I have a lot of skills and a lot of things we can put over into that. Our staff works a lot on our marketing stuff, especially on our e-commerce stuff. And that journey has been interesting because I like to start companies. And that one's been going for the last 4 to 5 years. Another company that we have, because I'm just kind of trying to hit all the things that we're in, is because of our consulting and because we like to train and because we like leadership development, we started a training company this last year. So training those small business leaders from 3 employees to 25 to 50-ish in that area, teaching clear vision, leadership, marketing and sales, operations and management, finance and culture. Kind of those sweet spots. And those are the kind we distilled down. These are the major categories that we all have to pay attention to. So what does that look like? And the leadership stuff, and if I'm going to recommend, I recommend books to folks all the time. If anybody cares about growing your leadership skills, this is kind of a heady book, but it's like one of my favorite books recently. So, Mastering Leadership It's on Wiley Press, which means they're kind of thick and it takes a while to read through. I'm not a fast reader, but I'm an avid reader. And these folks here have put together a process where there's a chart that looks sort of like this. You can't read all the details. And what happens in this chart is above the center line is mature skills and growth of a leader. And below the line are those things that become boat anchors to us. They become liabilities to us. They're those things that we operate. And when we are operating in fear or security and trying to protect, we actually start to grow these skills down on the bottom. And then when we're operating out of a safety and mission or purpose driven, we start to move into these healthy places above. And there's 18 skill sets, and they're divided into 5 different categories. And I want to read those 5 categories to you, if I can find my glasses. Those 5 are, and if you have anything to take notes, this is really good stuff to do. Relating, self-awareness, authenticity, systems awareness, and achieving. 5 categories of leadership.
Can you read this again, please?
I can. So the first is relating, self-awareness, authenticity, systems awareness, and achieving. They're broken down into 2 major categories. On one side of the circle, you have all these skills for task-oriented things in a business. On the other side are relational steps in a business. And when you're in a business, you've got to do both. You've got to figure out how to be good with people. You've got to figure out how to have emotional intelligence. You've got to figure out how to motivate people. If you're going to be a solopreneur or you're going to have, your goal is to have 1,000 employees, you're going to have to work with other people. You're going to have to do sales. You're going to have to work with vendors. If you're going to outsource, whether you're going to outsource to Texas or across town or Asia, you've got to learn how to communicate well. You've got to learn how to motivate people. You've got to learn how to hold people accountable and have hard conversations. You've got to learn to do all those things relational. Authenticity is that part of being real and genuine. Jerks can be very authentic. The goal is not to be an authentic jerk. And in our business, if in this short period of time of talking, the things that we've learned to do the most is learning to balance those things. I came in really good with people. I came in not so good with systems. I came in understanding high-level systems, but actually day-to-day, how do you put down, what does management look like? Are you doing the right things every day that you need to do and saying no to the things you don't need to do? How do you prioritize your time? All of those kind of things and structure it. But for us, as we were growing, it was those leadership categories that have become more and more important. And we apply them in Half a Bubble Out, and we apply them in Rabbit Hole Hay, and our newest company, that training company called Habbo Village, which Habbo is an acronym for Half a Bubble Out. And if you've never been in a company that's grown and done something like last 17 years and have employees and find your stability and all that kind of stuff, then it's easy to think, and I have friends that have $30, $40, $50 million a year companies, and it's easy to even for me to look at them and think, wow, look at how successful you are, look at how easy it was, look at how fast you rocketed up. We have friends that have a company that they did internet marketing over here, and they started a training company in the marketing space, and they're about a $50 to $60 million a year company after 7 years. Before they started that company, they were just doing trainings on marketing, and we just went to one of their conferences, their 10th annual conference, where 6,000 marketers came from all over the world to show up in San Diego and pay somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 a seat to show up for 3 days to their conference. And yet, because I know what's kind of happened behind the closed doors, because Ryan, almost lost everything because of a tax bill. Because he didn't understand that when he made all this money, he actually had to pay taxes to the government. And he ended up all of a sudden having a $200,000 tax bill, and he was a solopreneur. And he didn't have $200,000 in his bank account. He had a wife, a mortgage, 4 kids. Actually, probably at that point he had 2 kids. And was going, oh my gosh, I didn't understand this. I understood how to do marketing really well and make a lot of money over here. I also knew how to spend it really well. And I didn't know how to take care of all the balance of all the things that he needed to do. There's a lot of stuff we have to do as business owners and entrepreneurs and balance a lot of hats. And if anything about this, and I really want to get to questions because that's where a lot more dialogue is going to happen, is if you can learn and find a model, and this is a model that helps. It's not the end-all be-all, but it's good and it's true and it's based on leadership stuff. But there's other ones out there if you found one. Find a model that allows you to look at your life every day, to get up and go, how am I doing? Am I working on the right things? Am I working on myself and growing and maturing myself and my own skills and my own maturity? And am I working on the right things in the business? Because if you have a good business idea, you have a market, that there's actually a market there that's viable. And you start working on all the right things, the tasks and the relationship stuff, and you grow yourself and your own maturity, you've just given yourself the best chance of succeeding. But as we all know, there's no guarantees in it. Our journey's been crazy and roller coaster, and we've had times where we didn't know how we were going to make the mortgage or make payroll, and we've been through all that. But we've also come to a place where the company's stable, and if you're anywhere between stable and starting, it can happen. You can get to stable. And when you grow really fast, it's like a bike going too fast downhill. You start to wobble. And you start to lose stability a little bit. Do everything you can to hold on to stability, because if you lose that, you lose the chance to keep going with business. Because the whole thing can cave in on you. You don't want it to cave in on you. You want it to succeed. I'd love to just jump into questions because I feel like I'm just talking at you and I'm not sure any of this is relevant or helpful or anything.
It's all good, man. Yeah, I'm working it up.
Good, thank you. Yes, sir.
So,
Remind me your name again.
Mike Parker.
Okay.
So, I own Locals Choice Printing.
Okay.
So,
You own what?
Locals Choice Printing.
Locals Printing.
So I've actually listened to your blog, you and your wife, and Hobby Village. You guys have great email marketing too, which I really enjoy.
Thanks.
Picking that apart and looking at it. I think you guys do a great job with that. So you've worked with a lot of businesses, and it's inevitable that this bubble bursts.
The bubble we're in?
We're in a bubble.
Yeah.
So
We're all prepping for
If you're
it.
not good at entrepreneurship right now, if you're not doing something and you've been at it for a few years and you're not successful, you probably should go work for somebody else.
Fair enough.
So it's very easy. Most of what you talked about right now is self-awareness. If you were to say, looking on the outside of all these businesses you work with, but also having friendships with businesses and that type of thing,
Yeah.
what are some key lessons that you've learned and seeing people from the outside of their business, things they could have done early, and also in your own situation where you see this bubble coming, you're with hiring and firing and working with good employees, working with people that you would love to keep and can't afford to keep, but where is that situation with you, or what are some key things that you've learned when if the bubble did burst or when it's going to happen? What are some things that people should have in their mind about what they should be growing with right now?
So prepping for the next bubble burst.
What should people be doing?
Yeah. Does everybody understand that question?
So we're half a bubble out right now. First.
Right, and then we'll be a quarter of a bubble or no bubble. My wife and I are going to go find a beach somewhere and make snow cones and sell those.
Still cooking up martinis over there.
Right. Okay, let me answer that this way. I have experienced 3 bubbles in my life. Economic bubbles is what I'm talking about. The first one, I was not running a company, but my parents, I grew up with an entrepreneur as a father. They weren't either. So the first major bubble I saw as an adult was the tech bubble in the 2001 arena. That was the first time I was really, really paying attention to business. We hadn't been married barely 5 years, 7 years. We had a little girl. We were in that early stage of family and life and everything else, and we hadn't started half a bubble out yet. And the first thing I would say is out of the tech bubbles, study bubbles. So first of all, if you don't believe we're going into another bubble, you're not paying enough attention to history. History proves we just do it. It's part of the cycle. It's a good cycle. It's like the season. You got to go to winter so you can come back to spring. One of the things I saw there was that they always come. That was the first lesson I learned in the tech bubble. And it's amazing how many people get caught off guard because they don't believe it happened. So that was one of those things of be a student of history, especially economic history. And I mean, you don't have to be a total nerd about it, but you got to keep your eyes open and be aware of what's going on because history repeats itself. Two, the next bubble that we were part of was actually a technology bubble in the 2007-2008 arena. It was a technology in the medical world. It was a laser technology. There was a laser technology invented here in Chico, or a piece of equipment invented here in Chico that were first to market that killed toenail fungus. Is anybody aware of that company or remember that? We actually created their first logo for the company, or their second logo that they never used. They were very nice to us. They said they loved it. They paid us for it, and they never used it. It was very odd because from a graphic design perspective. But then they called us back really quickly and they said, our first two doctors are in Sacramento. Would you create some ads for them? And we said, sure. Well, I mean, if you'll write a check, we will be glad to create some ads for them. Well, we figured out really quickly that we had a niche and an idea and an ability to market. And we ended up in about 20 different cities across the country, doing toenail fungus marketing to the public because it was a cash pay business.
No, it's good dinner conversation.
It's one of those things, right?
What do you do?
Find it.
No, we sell technology for toenail fungus.
So
If it pays the bill.
it pays the bills, and you go, yes. And there are two things that we learned out of that bubble. One is we grew 400% in 1 year. The most painful growth I've ever experienced in my life. And we're looking and watching Rabbit Hole Hay and trying to manage it because we'd experienced that bubble that was a personal bubble and a technology bubble. And there were all these businesses, but what had happened was they were first to market. The FDA didn't have any laws yet on the books about medical laser technology at the time. They had a couple, but they didn't have a department. And then some of the big boys that were out there that were making equipment and stuff like that, they wanted to get into the market, but they were testing and doing their R&D, and that took about 1.5 years, 2 years. So there were all kinds of crazy things, PR going on, bad articles in the New York Times, this happening and that happening across the country, but these doctors were just writing checks. And people across the country were writing checks for this, and it was like the end-all be-all. And the technology worked. They could charge $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 to get your toenails laser that took 15, 20 minutes, and then you'd come back in a month or two and do it again, and back again and do it again, and after about 3 times, it really did solve a huge amount of problem. And the medical community was learning. What happened in the midst of that is the FDA created rules, the competition came out with a better product that worked faster, cheaper, and the doctors liked it more, and what you could charge $1,200 for yesterday, you could charge $300 for today. When somebody wrote a check for $15,000 a month for marketing and advertising and paid us for consulting and fees, and now they're like losing their shirts, the business disappeared. So, one, taking that experience and applying it to whatever happens, because there's little moments of bubbles in your business. The second one is don't put all your eggs in one basket. The bubble broke and we lost 50% of our business overnight. That's the real story. We grew 400%. It tore us as a company. We didn't manage our people well. We hired poorly. We thought, if we can just bring people in, that'll solve the problem. Don't hire poorly. That was one of the other lessons. Hiring poorly, you get yourself stuck in a situation that is miserable. And if you can avoid it,
Hire slow, fire fast.
Hire slow, fire fast. And create core values. Create core values and hire to those values, train to those values, and fire to those values. If there's a word in hiring, if there's a phrase in hiring that I love, and I didn't create it, but I use it all the time, create those core values and hire to them, train to them, and fire to them. Because The nice, sexy part of that story is, hey, guess what? In 2 years, we doubled the size of our company. But the roller coaster ride to get to doubling went to 4 times, caused all kinds of problems. We had to let people go. And Catherine and I hated our company. We built this cool company and we hated going to work. And we just wanted to give it back to the hospital. Like, take our baby back and give it to somebody else. Please. That was the second bubble, and the third bubble was the recession. If you're we're going into this, make sure you're not overextended if it's at all possible. You have to have some kind of thought process in the back of your mind. Where's the back door? Not to bail on your company. I'm not saying that. Although you need to be realistic. If that's the best thing to do and then to move on to the next idea or the next business, great. If you're mission or purpose driven, it's even harder because you're willing to go through the tough times and sometimes you need that. But what's going to happen is the recession's going to come, bubble's going to break, financing is going to be hard to get, interest rates are going to go up, then they're going to play with them. You're going to have customers that you thought were great customers that are going to disappear, and everything's going to be topsy-turvy. That's my experience. If it changes this time, that'll be great because it'll be easier. But going through that recession it was longer than we thought it was going to be to come out of it. It took way longer, and we had to buckle down all the hatches, consolidate. So we try not to overextend with our staff. We try not to overextend on what we're doing. And I'll be honest right now, we've got an opportunity to bring on a client that's probably 2 to 3 times larger than our largest client right now. We pitched yesterday. And I just realized this is going on YouTube, so I'll be careful what I say, but we're asking the question, is that in our best interest? Especially now that there's a recession coming. Because if all of a sudden a huge percentage of my revenue, this would make probably more than 20% of my revenue would be coming from one client, maybe 30%. That's a dangerous place to be because if you lose that client, you're not diversifying. That was a long answer to the bubble, but I think it's a great question, and there's a lot of stuff that is in there. Yes, sir.
Just so I can get ready for it, when exactly is the next bubble popping? I can
3 o'clock at...
Here is fine. Stay.
You know what? Everybody's paying attention that I'm listening to is saying it's either going to be this year or next year. I don't think any of us believe that it's going to be after 2020. Like it's going to be 21. So we're all prepping. The people I'm hanging out with, we're all prepping for at least thinking it could start happening at the end of this year or first half of next year.
Are you guys stockpiling food for the apocalypse, or how are you doing? I
mean, literally, we're trying to do business as usual and not get overextended on staff, on debt, or have a client that's too big of a client.
You're slowing down your growth ambitions for the moment until the economic certainty becomes a little more certain. You're not trying to grow big right now because you see a thing coming. You're like, it's boom time.
I'm trying to be very, very careful and not just go, hey, just hustle. I'm coming out of let's just do everything we can and being more precise. The only reason I hesitate is if you saw my whiteboard, my growth goals are pretty
insane, but that's fine.
High this year. But their growth goes in places that will create stability.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. You're diversifying more. You're trying to make.
Yeah. Yes.
So how do you balance between knowing when you're kind of here and taking the next step to grow, to say yes, we're going to take this business and we're going to start growing it there? Like how do you know? Because there's a fine line between staying where you're at and being comfortable and kind of taking the next step and kind of, oh hey, this is a little scary that this is where this is coming from, but eventually you're going to have to make that choice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you know?
And that was kind of what you were asking?
Well, with that, who do you talk to as a mentor to make these kind of decisions? I mean, who's your soundboard?
Yeah.
If we get their phone number and email.
No, they're mine.
You can't have all the mentors.
Sharing is caring.
So let me see if I understand the question. So I'm answering clearly. How do you know when to take the risk and when not to take the risk?
Mm-hmm.
Is that basically it?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have a formula. And here's the way I answer that question though, because I do have a way to answer it. I believe in a thing called wisdom. And that can be really vague to a lot of people, and I have a lot of ways I define what's good wisdom and what's not. I fall in this category where I think having a good knowledge base, and then understanding how to use that knowledge, and then how to properly apply it, those three together are wisdom. So knowledge, understanding, wisdom. Wisdom being that knowledge properly placed or used. So you can have a great idea, but if you implement it wrong, it falls apart. Okay, so in that context, what I see is this. Always have a community around you that are sounding boards. I like mentors, and I have mentors. So I have a couple of you folks that, like in different areas, I actually go to because they're more experienced. I've sought them out. I've built relationships. Build relationships with people who have expertise in areas. With just saying, I want to build a relationship and a friendship, and I want to learn from you. And most of the time, we're really good with that. I mean, once our schedule's full because I have people coming to me like that. But that's first. Get mentors. Second, create a community around you of people you believe are wise. Like, just because they're entrepreneurs doesn't make them smart, right? It makes them are kind of crazy, but people who've done it. And here's Competence of Character. The Speed of Trust is a phenomenal book if you've never read it. The Speed of Trust is the best description of trust that I've ever seen written out, diagramming it. And it says basically at its core, trust is made up of competence and character. I like you, you have good intentions, you have integrity. But you're also competent in an area. What's your business? What do you do?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I own a consulting business, marketing, digital media.
Okay, great. So you're in our space, right? So have you ever done brain surgery?
No.
Okay.
Right.
So if I know you and we're friends, I might trust you with marketing. But if I have I need brain surgery, just because I like you and you're a person with integrity and character, doesn't mean I'm going to go get my DeWalt drill and have you drill in my head so I can save some money so I don't have to go to Inland.
That's not how that works,
So that said, really rough. There's always a way to screw up an analogy in a group.
Only when you're talking about brain surgery.
Okay, but that said, you're not competent in that area. Find people who are competent in business and create relationships and build a sounding board there. And then the third thing is, so mentors, community of people who have demonstrated competence and character that you can trust. Third, eyes wide open. Every time we go into something, life is full of risks, right? There's no guarantees in life. The only guarantee is that there is no guarantees. It's that weird oxymoron. And I was taught this by a mentor that has done leadership development for 35 years. They're dear friends of ours, and they do consulting around the world in that area. And they happen to live here in Chico now. And we were at an impasse in one of our ventures at one point, and it was really, really, really difficult. And we didn't know if we were going to hit the button and eject or go forward. And ejecting was not simple because we would have lost a lot of money, relationship, and everything else. But it was that painful that we were considering. And after talking with him, he said, you need to know, this was really cool. He said, I will respect you if you go left or right, if you make this decision or this decision. But I would rather you go making this decision to stay in the business and to go forward with your eyes wide open, knowing what potentially could go wrong because you've already seen it go wrong, and now you're in a much healthier place. And if there's a formula for taking risks that mitigates the risk and better, is making sure that you have mentors that you're learning because you don't know what you don't know. Mentors, and not mentors, but a community of people you trust, because it's difficult to read the label from inside the bottle. So we don't always see what's going on in our own life because we're looking at it. And 3, being incredibly honest with what could happen and taking a look at it and then making those risk-filled decisions, intentionally knowing they're risk-filled decisions and they could blow up on us. Because then, if you're not going to really survive and thrive if you don't take risks. If none of us take risks. But if you build a system around you that's healthy and mature, with people that are healthy and mature, you have a much better chance of being able to survive through that and make wise decisions. And B, if anything blows up, whether it's the nuclear bomb in your business or it's a landmine that just took off your foot, you have a community around you that's going to help nurse you and console you and encourage you so that you can get up in the morning and go at it the next day. Is that helpful?
With that, we're at time, but if everyone wants to keep going, and Michael wants to answer a few more.
I don't mind answering more questions, but listening to me talk for too long is probably... Yes,
I would
ma'am.
add one thing, it's not a question, it's more of a comment.
Yes,
One
ma'am.
of the things you said a moment ago was surrounding yourself with, I concur with surrounding yourself with helping people, and one of the phrases I also use is, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, to that point, and you were saying, look for people who, have been successful, and you described it a little bit differently, I'm paraphrasing, right? Been successful and have been to mentor you, right? I would also add to that, when you're looking for that mentor, just because someone's been in successful companies doesn't mean that they are successful. It's very true. Because there's a lot of people who promote themselves as some of the people, but it's only because they've been lucky that they've been in some successful companies. It's not because that they have a lot to offer other than their ego. And so that's just a word of caution.
Value versus
It's a great
Value.
word.
We're talking about here?
No. I just have 30 years that I've been in multiple industries. It's,
Very cool.
yeah, I've seen it as a consistent theme.
Ego?
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for being a polite audience.
So, thank you for your time, everybody. We want to thank all of the sponsors and organizers for showing up. We have a few more people lined up for next week, but I have to actually phone it down and see who's going to do it. But more than likely, it's going to be one of the Chico State Center for Entrepreneurial pitching one of their ideas. There's 7 of them, so I'm kind of going through what they have and making sure that we can do another one. But last week, Connor was really nice. So look forward to seeing everybody again next week, same time, 9 o'clock, and have a great day.
Thank you.